is your favourite snack to eat whilst writing?
My favourite snack to have while writing would have to be a little packet of biscuits because like all authors, and I think pretty much all writers, a cup of tea while I'm writing a book is a must-have. So what makes a cup of tea better? Obviously some biscuits. And I think I would probably have to go with some chocolate digestives, a classic but indulgent with that beautiful side of chocolate. So definitely a pack of digestives.
Do you treat yourself when you have completed the first draft of a book?
Do I treat myself after I finish the first draft of a book? I think you absolutely have to treat yourself at that moment because writing the first draft, for me, is definitely the hardest part. You've got a blank screen staring back at you or a blank notebook and you have to fill that blank space with all of the words that are tumbling around in your head and form them into some sort of structure that will be enjoyable for the reader, and that is definitely the hardest part. It's quite intimidating when you've got that blank screen in front of you and you have to get all the words out. So definitely treat yourself when you finish that first draft, and I would usually probably have dinner with my friends and have a drink and just have a really lovely relaxed time and then an amazing night's sleep knowing that the hardest part of the job is definitely done.
What is your favourite thing to do when you have completely finished a book?
What is my favourite thing to do when I've fully finished the book? Well, by the end of the process, the author's job has kind of dwindled down into nips and tucks and just checking for typos and doing final read-throughs. So at the very end, there's not too much for the author to do. So there's not a huge moment of, yes, it's finally done, until suddenly your editor one day says, great, that's all done, we're going to send it off to print. And that's when you sort of have that moment of, wow, it's actually happening now. It's finally going to become a book, and that's really exciting. So that's usually when I would probably go down to Bournemouth, which is where I do a lot of my writing by the sea. So I like to go back down there and actually enjoy being by the sea and swim and just relax and have a coffee by the sea, because most of the time when I'm down there I'm writing, so it's really lovely to go back and celebrate actually having finished the book and getting to enjoy time by the sea.
What is your favourite children's book ever written?
Some of my absolute all-time favourite children's novels would definitely include his Dark Materials by Philip Pullman, that trilogy of books which follows Lyra as she travels through alternate worlds on an amazing adventure. And in fact, the second book of that trilogy, The Subtle Knife, is my favourite of the three. I also am a huge fan of Roald Dahl. When we were growing up, me and my brother had all of his books. Some were in his room, some were in my room, so we'd swap and borrow each other's books. And in particular, I always really loved George's Marvellous Medicine. And also, if you've read my books, you'll know that I am a huge fan of the seaside, so I always really loved Five Children and It by E. Nesbit and the story of the Psammead.
If you could invite 3 children's authors to dinner, past or present, who would you invite and why?
If I could invite 3 other children's authors for dinner, I would probably cheat slightly and invite 3 of my best friends for dinner. And they are Sam Sedgman, who's the author of the Adventures on Trains books and The Clockwork Conspiracy. Benjamin Dean, the author of Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow and The Boy Who Fell from the Sky. And finally, our friend Andy Sagar, who's the author of Yesterday Crumb and The Storm in a Teacup. They're 3 of the best authors I know, as well as 3 brilliant friends, so I'd love to have dinner with them and we'd have a brilliant time gossiping and talking all about books and storytelling.
If you could co-write a children's book with another author, who would you like to write with and why?
If I was to co-author a book with another children's author, I think I would probably ask Elle McNichol, who is the author of A Kind of Spark and Like a Charm. She is so talented and her books are some of the best children's books that have been published in the last 20 years. So I would love to pick her brain and learn from her while we wrote a book together. We have a lot of things in common. Whenever I see her or speak to her, we're always quoting our favourite movies and coming up with all sorts of funny, weird things that no one else remembers or ever thinks of. So we have that in common, and I think we could write something really fun set in that world of movies and Hollywood and 90s pop culture, which is something we really share.
If your shortlisted book were to be made into a film, who would you like to play your main characters?
If Son of the Sea were ever turned into a movie, which I would love because I am a huge movie nerd, I would probably want Casper and Wynne to be unknown actors. So people who are 10 or 11 years old and at school and maybe never even thought about acting before, but see a casting call and think, that really speaks to me, I'd love to play Casper in a movie. So if anyone's watching this and thinks that might be them, keep an eye out, because you never know what might happen. We'd have to get some really good prosthetic or webbed feet though, because Casper has enormous feet. As for some of the other characters, I think people like Beryl the Bazooka and Ida the Delmare Dolphin, I'd want them to be played by really iconic British national treasures. So maybe someone like Maggie Smith or Judi Dench. That would be really fun because they're some of my heroes, and I'd love the film to have that really quintessential British charm.